It's official. The financial discrepancy we've been tracking for 18 months just reached the point where denial is no longer possible. For years, we've analyzed the vault reports. We've watched the derivatives positions. We've predicted that the paper silver market would eventually face a reckoning with physical reality. But until this week, it was just a theory, a probability backed by mathematics, but without irrefutable proof. Well, stop guessing, stop speculating. The proof just landed. What's up? It's John from John Cashflow, and while you were watching the stock market hit new highs and crypto bounce around, something far more significant and far more terrifying just surfaced in the precious metals market. Something that Wall Street is desperately trying to bury because it exposes the largest fraud in commodity market history. We're talking about $12 trillion, not billion, trillion, with a T. $12 trillion in silver obligations that exist on paper, but have absolutely no physical metal backing them, and the evidence just became public through a combination of regulatory filings, exchange data, and a whistleblower report that dropped 72 hours ago. Let me show you exactly what disappeared, where it went, and why this changes everything you thought you knew about the financial system. 3 days ago, a former COMEX metals trader, under condition of anonymity, released a 247-page document to the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. This document, portions of which have now been leaked to independent financial researchers, details a systematic accounting discrepancy in the global silver derivatives market. The number that keeps appearing throughout this document is not a typo. It's not a mathematical error. It's $12.3 trillion. That's the notional value of silver derivative contracts, futures, options, swaps, and forwards, currently outstanding across global exchanges and over-the-counter markets. Now, you might be thinking, John, derivatives markets are always big. What's the problem? Here's the problem. According to the whistleblower's analysis, cross-referenced with data from the Bank for International Settlements, only 3.2% of these contracts are backed by allocated physical silver. Let me say that again. Of the $12.3 trillion in silver promises that banks, hedge funds, and institutions have made to each other, only $393 billion worth can actually be delivered in physical metal. That means $11.9 trillion has effectively vanished into a black hole of paper promises. Now, you need to understand what this actually means. The silver derivatives market is not some side casino for speculators. This is the foundational pricing mechanism for a strategic industrial metal that goes into solar panels, electric vehicles, 5G infrastructure, medical equipment, and water purification systems. This is the emergency room of the industrial economy. If the pricing mechanism is corrupted by phantom supply, then every manufacturer, every supply chain manager, and every strategic planner on Earth is making decisions based on fraudulent information. The fact that the world's largest banks have collectively created $12 trillion in silver exposure while holding only hundreds of billions in deliverable metal tells you everything about how broken the system really is. Let me break down the mechanics for you, because if you don't understand how the silver market actually functions, you'll completely miss why this $12 trillion figure represents an extinction-level event for the current financial architecture. Here's how the silver derivatives market actually works. Mechanism 1. The futures contract. One COMEX silver futures contract represents 5,000 ounces of physical silver. When a bank sells that contract, they're making a legal promise to deliver 5,000 ounces to the buyer at contract expiration. But here's the trick. They only have to put up about 10–15% margin. This means with $1 million in cash, a bank can sell contracts representing $7 to $10 million worth of silver they don't own. This is the leverage that has allowed them to suppress prices for decades. They flood the market with paper silver, driving the price down, then buy back the contracts cheaper. Rinse and repeat. But leverage cuts both ways. Mechanism 2. The vault shuffle. Physical silver sits in vaults, but not all vault silver is the same. There are two categories: registered, available for delivery against futures contracts; eligible, stored in the vault, but already owned by someone else. Think of it like a parking garage. Registered spaces are empty and available. Eligible spaces are occupied. For years, banks have been reporting total vault inventory to make it look like there's plenty of silver. But when delivery demands spike, they can only access the registered category. As of last week, COMEX registered silver sits at 28.4 million ounces. At current prices around 32 ounce, that's roughly $908 million in deliverable metal backing a market with $12.3 trillion in derivative exposure. The ratio is 13,500 to 1. For every ounce of physical silver that actually exists in deliverable form, there are 13,500 ounces worth of paper claims against it. Mechanism 3. The OTC shadow market. COMEX futures are just the visible part of the iceberg. The really big money trades in the over-the-counter OTC market, private derivative contracts between banks that don't show up on public exchanges. According to the Bank for International Settlements, the OTC precious metals derivatives market has a notional value exceeding 10 trillion. These are swaps, forwards, and exotic options that banks use to hedge their mining exposure, their currency risk, and their other silver derivatives. That's right. They're using derivatives to hedge derivatives. It's a fractal of leverage built on top of leverage, and at the very bottom of this inverted pyramid sits a tiny pile of physical metal that wouldn't fill an Olympic swimming pool. Mechanism 4. The authorized participant loophole. Silver ETFs, like SLV, were supposed to solve this problem. They were supposed to represent real allocated metal that investors could trust. But the fine print reveals something disturbing. Authorized participants, the big banks, can create and redeem ETF shares using or equivalent language. That means they can potentially deliver leased silver, unallocated silver, or even paper claims instead of real bars. The audit requirements are opaque, and the custodians are often the same banks that are short in the futures market. So when the whistleblower says $12 trillion has vanished, here's what he means. It's not that $12 trillion in cash disappeared, it's that $12 trillion in legal obligations were created without anyone bothering to secure the underlying asset. The banks sold insurance on a house that doesn't exist. They wrote checks against an account with no money in it. And now the counterparties are starting to ask for delivery. Let's do the math on what happens when this unwinds. Global silver mining produces roughly 830 million ounces per year. At 32 ounce, that's about $26.6 billion in annual new supply. If just 1% of the $12 trillion derivative market demanded physical settlement, that would require $120 billion worth of silver. At current prices, that's 3.75 billion ounces. That's 4.5 years of total global mine production. And that's just 1%. If 5% demanded delivery, we're talking about 22 years of mining output needed immediately. This isn't a shortage. This is mathematical impossibility. The derivative market has decoupled so completely from physical reality that there is no price at which this can be unwound smoothly. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Let's look at the timing of this whistleblower report and cross-reference it with other events in the financial system. Timeline: March 15th. 3 regional banks quietly tapped the Federal Reserve's emergency lending facility for a combined $4.3 billion. The mainstream media barely reports it. March 18th, the Basel III regulations requiring banks to hold physical gold as Tier 1 capital trigger a 14% spike in gold lease rates. Silver, which usually tracks gold, barely moves. Odd. March 22nd, COMEX registered silver inventory drops by 8.2 million ounces in a single week, the largest withdrawal since the 2021 Reddit squeeze. March 25th, the whistleblower document drops. Within 6 hours, 3 major bullion banks suspend retail silver sales, citing supply chain issues. March 26th, Bloomberg runs a story titled, "Silver Market Remains Well Supplied," featuring quotes from J.P. Morgan's head of commodities. The article doesn't mention the COMEX inventory drain or the whistleblower report. The correlation is 1.0. This is not coincidence. The banks are facing a delivery crisis because industrial buyers, the Chinese EV manufacturers, the solar panel companies, the defense contractors, are no longer accepting cash settlement. They saw what happened with nickel on the London Metals Exchange in 2022, when the exchange literally canceled trades to save a short seller. They saw the COMEX change the rules during the gold squeeze of 1980. They don't trust the paper market anymore. They want the metal. And the numbers in the whistleblower report explain why Wall Street is panicking. Here's the trap they've created. They can't let the price rise too fast because every dollar increase triggers billions in margin calls on their short positions. But they can't keep selling more paper contracts to suppress the price because industrial buyers are now converting those contracts into delivery demands instead of cash settlement. They've backed themselves into a corner where suppressing the price accelerates the physical drain, but letting the price rise bankrupts their trading desks. This is a classic doom loop, and we're watching it accelerate in real time. The geopolitical dimension. Do you think it's an accident that this is happening while China is stockpiling commodities at record rates? While Russia is demanding commodity-backed payment for oil? While the BRICS nations are openly discussing a gold-backed trade currency, the $12 trillion phantom silver market is the perfect pressure point. If you're an adversarial nation and you want to expose the fraud at the heart of Western financial markets, you don't attack the dollar directly. You attack the derivatives market of a strategic metal where the leverage is insane and the physical supply is limited. You simply stand for delivery. You keep rolling your contracts forward and demanding the metal. Eventually, the exchange runs out. They declare force majeure, and suddenly the world sees that the vaunted New York and London commodity markets are backed by nothing but promises and printing presses. The whistleblower report isn't just a financial document, it's a geopolitical weapon, and someone just armed it. Now, Wall Street, the same experts who told you inflation was transitory, who said the housing market was rock solid in 2007, who promised you that SVB was well capitalized, is already spinning this story. JP Morgan's commodity desk released a statement yesterday saying, the silver market remains fundamentally balanced with adequate inventory to meet industrial demand. They're either lying or they're using a definition of adequate that would make Orwell blush. Let me explain what adequate inventory actually means in this context. When banks say the market is balanced, they're counting eligible inventory, silver that's sitting in vaults but already owned by someone else. It's like a car dealership counting cars in the parking lot that customers have already purchased and are waiting to pick up, then claiming they have plenty of inventory to sell. The only number that matters is registered inventory, 28.4 million ounces. One single industrial buyer placing an order for silver to build a solar farm can demand 5 to 10 million ounces. One order, and we're supposed to believe that 28 million ounces is adequate when there's 12.3 trillion in derivative exposure? The math doesn't math. The media's go-to deflection. Financial journalists love to say, well, most derivatives are just hedges. They net out. It's not real exposure. This is technically true in a functioning market where counterparties trust each other. But we're not in that market anymore. When Lehman Brothers collapsed in 2008, everyone said their exposure was hedged too. But when one domino falls, all those beautiful hedges turn into radioactive liabilities because your hedge counterparty just went bankrupt. In the derivative world, everyone is hedged until suddenly no one is hedged. Here's the tell. If the silver market was truly fine, if the $12 trillion was just normal hedging activity backed by adequate physical supply, then why did 3 major dealers suspend sales? Why did lease rates spike? Why are premiums on physical coins running 40–60% over spot? When you go to buy a product and the seller says, "Sorry, we can't sell to you right now, even though the price says we can," that's not a balanced market. That's a shortage being masked by a fraudulent price signal. The mainstream narrative wants you to look at the COMEX screen price of $32 and think everything is fine. But the street price, the price you actually pay for a 1,000-ounce bar, is $37–38 if you can even find one. That $5 or $6 premium is the market screaming that the paper price is a lie. This can't be contained to just the silver market, and Wall Street knows it. Here's why this $12 trillion discrepancy represents a systemic threat to the entire financial system. The collateral chain. Modern banking operates on rehypothecation, using the same asset as collateral for multiple loans. A bar of silver sitting in a London vault might be pledged as collateral for a commercial loan, leased to a hedge fund for a short sale, counted as backing for an ETF share, used as margin for a derivative contract. The same ounce gets counted 4 or 5 times across different balance sheets. Everyone assumes they have a claim on it, but when delivery demands spike, the music stops, and someone realizes they're holding an empty bag. If a major bank defaults on a silver delivery, it doesn't just affect their metals desk. It triggers cross-default clauses across their entire derivative book. Their counterparties panic. Credit lines get pulled. The contagion spreads faster than COVID in a nursing home. Historical parallel: the London gold pool. This is exactly what happened in 1968 with the London gold pool. 7 central banks tried to suppress the gold price at 35 ounce by selling coordinated paper claims. But France called their bluff and demanded physical delivery. The pool collapsed in 10 weeks. Gold was revalued to $42, then $70, then eventually $850 by 1980. The mechanism is identical, the hubris is identical, and the outcome will be identical. A violent, chaotic repricing of the metal to a level where paper claims no longer matter because no one trusts them. The Basel III connection. Starting in June 2022, Basel III regulations required European banks to hold physical gold, not paper gold, as Tier 1 capital. This was supposed to prevent another Lehman-style collapse where solid assets turned out to be vaporous derivatives. But the rules exempted silver. Why? Because the banking lobby knew that if they applied the same standard to silver, the entire derivatives market would implode overnight. There simply isn't enough physical metal to back the paper claims. By exempting silver, regulators essentially admitted that the market is fraudulent, but decided to let it continue because unwinding it would be too painful. The central bank dilemma. The Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, and the ECB are now stuck in an impossible position. Option A, let the free market work. Let the banks who oversold silver face the consequences. Let the price rise to whatever level clears the delivery demands. This would mean silver at $200, $300, maybe $500 ounce. It would bankrupt the bullion banks and expose the derivative fraud, but it would establish honest price discovery. Option B, intervene, provide emergency liquidity to the banks, maybe even nationalize silver supplies, or declare force majeure on the contracts. This keeps the banks alive, but completely destroys trust in commodity markets and confirms to the world that Western markets are rigged casinos. They'll choose option B. They always choose option B. But here's the fatal flaw. You can print dollars to bail out a bank's cash shortage. You cannot print silver bars. The physical shortage is real. No amount of liquidity injections will create metal that doesn't exist. The geopolitical weaponization. China produces 13% of global silver. Peru produces 18%. Mexico produces 23%. Combined, 3 countries control over half of global new supply. Now imagine you're a Chinese strategic planner. You see this whistleblower report? You see that Western banks have created $12 trillion in silver obligations backed by almost nothing. What do? You buy every ounce you can. You restrict exports. You demand physical delivery on your contracts. You coordinate with other BRICS nations to do the same. You turn the Western financial system's own leverage against it. You force them to either default on contracts, destroying trust in their markets, or print massive amounts of currency to buy silver at any price, destroying the dollar's purchasing power. It's a checkmate scenario. And the $12 trillion discrepancy is the proof that the trap is set. The whistleblower's motive. Why would someone inside the system expose this now? The report suggests the trader saw the writing on the wall. He saw his firm preparing for a massive unwinding. He saw the legal liability building. By going public, he's trying to establish a paper trail showing that people inside the system knew this was fraudulent. When the lawsuits start flying after the collapse, he'll be a witness, not a defendant. His timing suggests he thinks the collapse is imminent, probably within the next 18 months. So what happens next? Here's the roadmap based on the whistleblower document and the data we're seeing. Phase 1. The denial. Current, next 3 months. The mainstream media will continue to downplay this story. You'll see articles about silver conspiracy theorists and adequate supply. The price might even get smashed in a coordinated paper dump to prove that everything is fine. Don't fall for it. Every price smash in a physical shortage is just a sale sign on an empty shelf. It accelerates the drain from the vaults as smart money buys the dip. Phase 2, the admission, 3 to 9 months out. As registered inventory continues to drop and more delivery defaults occur, the narrative will shift. They'll start admitting there's temporary tightness in the physical market. Premiums will explode. You'll see 80%, 100%, maybe 150% premiums over spot. This is when the dual pricing emerges. Paper silver trading at one price on COMEX, physical silver trading at a completely different price on the street. The spread between them is the measure of the fraud. Phase 3. The break, 9-18 months out. Either COMEX declares force majeure and settles contracts in cash, or a major bank defaults on delivery. Either event destroys confidence in the paper market permanently. Physical silver becomes essentially unobtainable at any price for retail buyers. The only transactions are between sovereigns, central banks, and major industrial users. The price discovery mechanism shifts from New York and London to Shanghai and Dubai. We're looking at triple-digit silver, 100, 150, potentially 200 plus, not because of industrial demand alone, but because the derivative fraud unwinds and trillions in hot money desperately seeks to convert paper claims into physical assets. What you need to do right now. 1. Understand that volatility is the weapon. The banks will use their last reserves of paper ammunition to create violent price swings designed to shake out weak hands. If you see silver drop $5 in a single day, don't panic. Check the registered inventory. Check the premiums. If the physical market is still tight, the paper smash is fake and temporary. 2. Watch the spread. The gap between paper spot price and physical dealer price is your truth meter. When that spread goes from $2 to $3 to $8, $10 to 20 plus, you're watching the derivative market death spiral in real time. 3. Understand counterparty risk. If you own silver through an ETF, a pool account, or an unallocated storage program, you own a promise, not metal. When the defaults start, you'll be an unsecured creditor in bankruptcy court. If you own physical metal in your possession or in fully allocated segregated storage with a non-bank vault, you own an asset. There's a massive difference. 4. Prepare for the unobtainium phase. We are approaching the moment where the buy button simply disappears. Dealers will run out. Mints will show 6-month delays. Premiums will be so high that the spot price becomes irrelevant. If you're waiting for a dip, you're betting that you can time the collapse of a $12 trillion fraud. That's not investing. That's gambling. And the house always wins until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, the casino closes. 5. Diversify your silver position. Consider holding physical coins and bars, portability, recognizability, 1,000 Oz bars if you have serious capital, lowest premiums. Shares in royalty companies like Wheaton Precious Metals, leverage to price, no mining risk. Junior miners with actual resources, 10-50x leverage to silver price moves. Don't put everything in one vehicle. The system is breaking in unpredictable ways. My price target, based on the $12 trillion derivative exposure and only $908 million in deliverable COMEX inventory, a true price discovery event, where paper claims try to convert to physical, would require silver above 150 ounce just to ration demand. But that assumes orderly unwinding. If this breaks chaotically, if we get sovereign default or exchange closure, we could see 200 oz or 300 ounce within months. This is no longer speculation about industrial supply deficits. This is mathematical certainty based on the leverage ratios the whistleblower just exposed. The $12 trillion didn't disappear in the sense that it evaporated. It disappeared in the sense that it was never real to begin with. It was a fiction, and now reality is sending the bill. We are witnessing the greatest wealth transfer in modern history, and most people won't even realize it's happening until it's over. Wealth isn't destroyed, it's transferred. And right now, it's transferring from those who hold paper promises, ETF shares, futures contracts, unallocated accounts, to those who hold physical reality. For 40 years, the financial economy cannibalized the real economy. Paper claims were treated as superior to physical assets. Financialization was worshipped. We were told that holding actual commodities was primitive and inefficient. The tide has turned. The real economy is about to devour the financial economy. The holders of physical assets, the miners, the stackers, the people who insisted on taking delivery, you are about to be proven right in the most spectacular way possible. Wall Street is insolvent on a mark-to-reality basis. They have $12 trillion in obligations backed by less than $1 billion in deliverable assets. The math is fifth-grade arithmetic. A child can see the fraud. The only question is, which side of the transfer are you on? Do not sell your physical silver for fiat currency that's being printed to bail out the very banks that defrauded you. When silver hits $100, don't cash out for dollars, leverage it, borrow against it, trade it for land, for businesses, for productive assets, but do not trade it back into the burning building of a derivative-soaked financial system. The whistleblower report that dropped this week was the flare gun. It lit up the night sky and revealed the battlefield. And what we saw was a banking system built entirely on fraud, backed by nothing, sustained only by the belief that no one would ever call their bluff. Someone just called the bluff. You hold the metal. You hold the position. You have the patience. And now you have the proof, 247 pages of it, that you were right all along. The $12 trillion cover-up is over. The truth is out. And the repricing event is coming. My name is John from John Cashflow, and the silver squeeze isn't coming. It's already here. Wall Street just hasn't admitted it yet. If this investigation opened your eyes to what's really happening in the commodities markets, do me a favor. Smash that like button so YouTube knows to show this to more people. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next update when Phase 2 of this crisis kicks off. And share this video with anyone who still thinks their paper investments are safe. The mainstream media won't cover this. The banks definitely don't want you talking about it, so it's up to us, the John Cashflow community, to get the truth out. Drop a comment below. Are you holding physical, or are you still in paper? Let's see where everyone stands. And if you want the deep dive on exactly which mining companies are positioned to absolutely explode when this derivative fraud unwinds, check out my previous video linked in the description. The transfer is happening. Make sure you're on the right side of it. I'll see you in the next one.